found over the years is that people tend to, think they have to cut calories, think they have to train harder, think they have to do all this extreme stuff to try to get rid of this kind of stubborn area of body fat. And what I've found to be true is once we understand how hormones work in the body, particularly the hormones we're going to speak about today, we can almost think a little bit smarter about how we approach the whole fat loss journey rather than harder. And one of the things I've also found is that when we smash the body with low-calorie diets or calorie-controlled diets, when we feel like we have to train like harder and really screw our hormones up even more, then we can actually do more damage, not only the wear and tear on the body, if you're doing sort of more high intensity, running and things to try and get rid of the excess belly fat, but you're also potentially giving yourself a lot of cortisol increase unnecessarily. So that can cause issues with your adrenals, which we'll go through in more detail, but that's a little bit of a welcome. Now, my study, and going back to being in the industry for 2 decades, I stumbled across this probably a decade ago. So Biosignature is a study that uncovers the correlation between body fat distribution and hormone imbalances. It's anything from excess body fat storage, poor sleep, low energy, impaired cognitive or brain function, and more. I mentioned before about having a teenage son. That's just one example of how hormones can really disturb our energy, our moods. Going into, say, the other spectrum, you've got perimenopausal, postmenopausal women that also have issues hormonally. And so it makes sense to get ourselves educated on hormones and how they work. I know a lot of people have specifically wanted to tune in to work out how to get rid of stubborn areas of body fat, but it's really good to understand, just the common hormones in your body and how you can help balance them. It helps to improve, obviously, body composition, so muscle to fat ratio, and your overall well-being. So the focus really is on nutrition, training, supplementation, and lifestyle modification. So we'll go through those today, and in particular, the ones that relate specifically to belly fat. So the role of insulin, that's a hormone we're going to be speaking of quite a bit in the first part of this webinar, and how it contributes to belly fat. The role of cortisol, which is another key hormone when we're looking at stubborn areas of belly fat. And then, how we can control both of these hormones to help shift belly fat. Now, there's not a magic pill. It takes a lot of, just common sense thinking around how to approach stuff. But you might have a few light bulb moments today that you might not have thought about prior to this. So hopefully that rings true for you, and you can approach your health and fitness journey and your belly fat loss journey in a slightly smarter, more than smarter, not harder way, which is what it's all about. So the first hormone we've got is insulin. So this is produced in the pancreas when carbohydrates are eaten. So I just found this little diagram. It's always good to have a little bit of a visual. So when you eat carbohydrates, the insulin secretes, and then what its role is in the body is to transport energy in the form of glycogen to your muscles, predominantly, but also your brain. So if you're, very glycogen depleted, often people can't think properly. If you've known someone that's diabetic, or you are diabetic yourself, you can go into a hypoglycemic episode where your insulin's not breaking down glucose, and people pass out, things like that. So insulin is a very important hormone in the body, and it regulates our metabolism as well. So basically what the problem is specifically with this hormone is that we tend to overproduce insulin, and this is what causes excess fat. This is seen largely in the love handle area when we're speaking about the belly. So, people call it the muffin top area, that lovely bit of flab that hangs over the jeans. But that's specifically insulin, and also back fat. So if that's another problem area for you, then that can be directly related to excess or too much insulin in the body. And basically what happens over time is when your body produces too much, you start to build up what we call insulin resistance. So in other words, it goes, oh, I have to produce so much because I'm eating so much of the wrong carbohydrates, and I'm having to produce so much that all of a sudden it just goes, you know what, I can't do this anymore, and it starts to become insulin resistant. So in other words, it's not breaking down the glucose, and it's not transporting energy to the muscles, and it's not feeding your brain. So then we start to have blood sugar management issues, and obviously this is what causes the excess belly fat as well. So what we need to do is we need to control this hormone, and we'll get on to how we do that shortly. The second hormone that specifically relates to belly fat is your cortisol, or is cortisol. Another little diagram here I found. So it's good to get a little visual. It's secreted by the adrenals, which are walnut-sized glands that are located on top of the kidneys. So they're only quite small. It's produced in response to stress on the body to protect it. So it's not just physiological stress. So, you might be going through anxiety, worry, things that can put us into overdrive. That's one form, and that certainly does increase or secrete cortisol. But we must also understand that it's a physiological response or a physical response. So every time our body goes under any sort of, high intensity exercise, if we're dehydrated, if we're sleep deprived as well, they're all stresses on the body. So as a response, the body will secrete cortisol. It's basically its way of protecting it. It's I've got another person here. Its way of protecting the body. So why it's not good to produce too much of this particular hormone is because it can actually produce too much fat around the belly, and in particular around the navel. So going back to the biosignature that I mentioned right at the start of the webinar, what they've found is in the biosignature study is that cortisol pouch, which is kind of like that real stubborn area of belly fat. And I've noticed this, obviously when you have a baby, your skin stretches as well, so that there's not much you can do about that particular element. But certainly from a stress point of view, having children can be a little bit stressful, because you do have to look after this human being. They're in your care now. So, I'm thinking most of you that have tuned in today are parents, so you can relate to me there. But, it's this sort of stubborn area that you might start to control insulin, which we're going to talk about soon. Your love handles go down, so that dreaded bit of overlap over the genes, and as I mentioned before, the bra strap fat, so the back fat. You can control, or you can reduce those body fat sites, because you're starting to control insulin, which is a lot easier to do than cortisol. Because who here, and I don't have a sort of a hands up, or I can't see your reaction, but we all have stresses that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so how do we minimize the amount of stress we put on the body? Well, the first thing really is looking at the physiological stresses. So, we're going to look at the best exercise to not put too much stress on the body but still get a result. Things like dehydration, sleep management, stress management, they're all things that we can do to help with promoting cortisol management, and in turn help reduce that belly fat, particularly around the navel area. So if that's a stubborn area for you, and I'm putting my hand up because I've done really well the last 15 months, but I'm looking at my stress management a little bit more now, because that's an area for myself. So this is how we approach our fat loss journey smarter, rather than say, all right, I'm going to run 25 Ks and eat less food, and hopefully that'll work. It's like, well, that's actually going to stress your body out even more, and probably make your knees shot. I mean, I turn 40 next year, so I certainly can't be running over, I think probably 5Ks would be my max these days, but I don't even run that much these days. But you know, you've got to think smarter about it. So that's when we want to educate ourselves on how to manage cortisol as well. So we'll get to that shortly. So controlling insulin. Basically, there's probably three main areas. The biggest would be nutrition, and that's why I've put it at the top. Meal frequency is probably one of the biggest ones here, as well as choosing low insulin response carbohydrates. Now, when I say meal frequency, I don't mean you have to eat every 2 hours like a bodybuilder. It's basically just eating to set your blood sugar levels up. So often when we look at blood sugar management, we're looking at insulin like response. So we're looking at insulin going up, then insulin going down, which is like blood sugar crashing. So to help control insulin, we want to manage our blood sugar. When we do that, we'll see a significant drop around that love handle area that I spoke about before. So you want to be eating frequently, so not going, you know, half a day without eating. I know some people fast in the morning, and that's completely okay. I'm talking about, you know, forgetting to eat your lunch and then getting to, like, you know, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night and binge eating, that sort of thing. Fasts can work if you do them in a controlled manner. I'm not going to go into fasting today. I think fasting works for some people. It doesn't always work for everyone. So you've got to work out for you if that works. However, I do know that eating frequently, so if you have your first meal later in the day, you still want to eat every, you know, 3, if not 4 hours after. If you're pushing it out more than 4 hours, you run that risk of screwing up the blood sugar management, the insulin management, and it's going to be really difficult to manage your weight when your blood sugar is all over the shop. Low insulin response carbs, I've got a whole list of these if any of you guys have done my Muscle Mama program or you're interested in it. It's all in the manuals. Now, I'll just give you a quick example. Something that would be high insulin response in comparison to another food would be, say, white rice would have a really high insulin response. So when you eat that, your body has to produce a lot of insulin to break it down into glucose. So a better choice, if you like that sort of starchy carb, would be something like sweet potato or say cauliflower rice. So you're basically not reducing carbohydrates or cutting them completely out of your diet. You're actually swapping them out to choose for low insulin response carbohydrates. So this will ultimately reduce the amount of insulin that your body has to produce on a day in, day out basis. That will help support blood sugar management, and in turn that will actually get you a better result. So look at your overall diet, look at what maybe, you know, processed foods or high insulin response carbs that you might be eating currently. You know, even some fruits, if you're eating them too often, I'm all for, you know, fruits, just look at which ones. So again, say a watermelon would be a really high insulin response fruit, whereas say a handful of blueberries or berries would have a lower insulin response. So it's not about cutting calories, you know, and it's just choosing the right carbohydrates. It's not about reducing carbs completely. Training. Now, people often say, oh, how can not running, you know, improve my belly fat? Well, if you look at how your body responds to different styles of training, it really makes a lot of sense that we want to do more high volume. So anyone that's done my strength training programs, they know what high volume means. High volume is basically the amount of sets that we're doing. So over a 7-day week, I would look at doing a minimum of 3 high volume weight training sessions a week, up to 4 if you're really keen, 5 to 6. But yeah, definitely 3, you'll notice a difference if you haven't done much weight training before. 4 would be even better. I've consistently done 4 sessions for the last probably 8 months. I've been a lot more consistent with my training. And I used to probably train a little bit more than that before Bubba, but even with 3 to 4 sessions consistently over the last few months, I've noticed a big change. So I do really feel like when you get the right style of training to help improve insulin, it can really make a significant difference to not only your waistline, but also your entire body. So it'll help improve that muscle to fat ratio. It'll help improve just your overall strength. But in relation to the belly fat, once we become more insulin sensitive, which is the opposite to insulin resistance, which we talked about at the start, your body will burn carbohydrates more effectively. You'll start to control blood sugar better. Your body will actually, produce the right amount of insulin. It'll do what it should do in the body, and it won't be storing as body fat. So in other words, anything that promotes insulin sensitivity, which means that your body will break down carbohydrates effectively and use them for fuel, is good for the body and good for controlling belly fat and great for insulin control. So weight training, guys, if you're not on a good high volume weight training program, wait till the end because I've got some specials for my programming. Supplementation. So again, looking at insulin sensitivity, I've got some subs that I've been promoting at the moment. L-leucine is an amino acid that really helps with blood sugar management. A lot of you guys that have been taking that have been absolutely gobsmacked by the results, and it's because it's in its pure form. You can't really beat a branched chain amino acid in its purest form. There's a lot on the market out there, but a lot have added things to them to make them more palatable. I've got a capsule form, so I'll talk a little bit more about that in more detail later. But other things that help improve insulin sensitivity are your good fats. So you can add good fats in your nutrition, obviously. Things like avocado, nuts, tahini, seeds are really good. Like you might have a nut and seed bread instead of like a normal, run-of-the-mill bread that can increase insulin. So they're really good. If you feel like you don't get enough in your diet, so if you're not a massive salmon eater or if you're not a massive good fat eater, then something like a EPA dominant fish oil. There's some good ones on the market I can recommend. The Poliquin brand are great as well. That's really good too for helping insulin sensitivity. So taking some sort of EPA dominant because that's what helps the insulin breakdown or glucose breakdown. It also helps control blood sugar management again. So once you're getting more fats into your diet, it helps control that blood sugar. A lot of people shy away from good fats, and certainly, I understand that if you're following a calorie controlled diet, there is that fear of overdoing it. But what I've found over time is when you look at the hormones responsible for metabolism and weight gain, people have nothing to fear because good fats, they're essential. They really are essential, not just for improving metabolism and insulin, response in your body, but they're also great for your hair, your sex hormones. So they've done a lot of studies on fertility and good fat increase, particularly animal fats. So people tend to shy away from fatty cuts of meat. They tend to stick to the lean cuts, but they're actually finding now that some of those animal fats are really good for the body. So there's a lot of good news out there in regards to fats, and we certainly don't want to be cutting out fats out of our diet out of fear. Definitely get them in form of nuts, seeds, avocado, and your animal fats, and things like your fatty fish are very good as well. Like I said before, controlling blood sugar, making sure it doesn't go too far up or too far down. It's kind of stays in that sort of middle zone most of the day, is the key to controlling insulin. So that's your key to really starting to shift those stubborn areas of body fat. All right. Controlling cortisol. Now, I just want to say on the back end of controlling insulin that one of the key elements of controlling cortisol is to actually start with controlling insulin. So get your nutrition right. That's going to help. The reason being is when you're not managing blood sugar, your blood sugar is going to be up through the roof, then it's going to crash. So you get that sugar high. You might have a high processed carbohydrate. You get your work done because you're like on a sugar high, but then you crash and you are like, oh my gosh, I feel like I need another sugar hit just to get my energy back up. And so when we're in that crash zone, that's actually when our body goes into stress. So when I was explaining what cortisol was at the start, I mentioned about your body, any sort of stress on the body. So low blood sugar is a stress on the body. Your body will start to secrete cortisol in response to low blood sugar because it's your body's way of defending or protecting itself. So controlling insulin will actually control cortisol. So the two work together. Now, in terms of training, we don't want to be doing long cardio sessions. Now, this is a light bulb moment for me. In my 20s, I used to do the half marathons and, the weight would just come off and, happy days. I probably had not much to stress about back then, really, when I think about it. But, like those things now, to sort of think, oh, if I had to feel like I had to run 10Ks 4 or 5 days a week to lose weight, it would just be like, no, I can't do that. And in actual fact, as we get older, we have to train smarter because, that the body, we've got no choice. The body will tell us to train smarter. So things like HIIT training and long cardio. Look, I mean, there's some great movement patterns in HIIT. I just think overall, as a sustainable form of training, I don't think it's great for cortisol control. I think it stresses the body too much, particularly if you've already got high stress in your everyday life. The last thing you need to be doing is going to the gym and sort of flogging yourself on, these sort of high HIIT training exercises. So just be mindful. If you do a little bit, just be mindful of how you feel. If it's like really, making you feel like it's too much, if it's stressing you out, if you're feeling like it's not giving you energy, it's taking away, maybe choose some more weights or restorative forms of exercise. So stretching, Pilates, core, anything that helps replenish you is also a great form of training and will help to control cortisol. I know a lot of my guys that I'm coaching, they spend the last 5-10 minutes of their workout just doing deep breathing. A little bit of a meditation optional. If you're not really into that, you might just do some deep breaths in, some deep breaths out, and as you're breathing out, just really focus on your body awareness. All that stuff helps control cortisol. I feel like too, with cortisol control, just get the basics right. Sleep, hydration, avoiding screen time too late at night. All those things will really help with your cortisol control. In terms of your weight training, you don't want to be doing an hour to an hour and a half of weights in the gym. Most good training sessions you could knock over in 20 minutes as a minimum. And I know for you time poor people, you'll be like, oh yes, that's great. You just got to get in and do it. Up to 45 minutes. So training for longer than 45 minutes. There's no real extra benefit to it, particularly if we're looking at hormonal response and controlling cortisol. I really find that people tend to train too much in the quest of feeling like that's going to get them the result. I feel like if you're doing quality sessions and you're doing high volume training, you could knock it over. I think at the moment I'm doing about 30 minutes in the gym. And I'm feeling like, yep, that's it. I'm getting results from that. If I feel like I'm plateauing, you might step it up to 45. But yeah, I often find over that 45-minute mark, it becomes a little bit like your intensity drops off anyway because, you're feeling like it's a bit too much. So that's something to think about with your exercise. And I've got heaps of programming if you need help with that. Supplementation. Now, there's a typo here. This is on my last hormone. So with supplementation, I was going to mention the BCAA again. So the L-leucine that I spoke about in controlling insulin also helps blunt cortisol post-workout. So when you've got stress on the body from exercise, your body is going to be flooded with cortisol post-workout. So one of the ways that we can help obviously build muscle and reduce belly fat is to blunt that cortisol production post-workout. So we take L-leucine, which is the BCAA, post-workout, but we also take it during the workout. So then we give ourselves the best opportunity to recover from the exercise. Even if people have got, you know, post-exercise soreness the day after, but they're having a rest day, often I'll say have some L-leucine. I think that really helps repair. It really helps with cortisol, and it really helps with energy when you are starting to step up your training as well. So that's a really good supplement for controlling cortisol. If you've got a good magnesium, particularly if you're someone that doesn't sleep well at night, if you're either struggling to get to sleep or have solid sleep, which isn't, you know, circumstantial like having a baby, then magnesium can really help. I sell that in a multi, or you can have it if you're really feeling like that's an issue for you or stress is an issue for you. You can have it in, you know, in a straight formula as well. I mentioned stress management before. So, you know, going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time, that really helps with cortisol control. I'm pretty sure on the next slide I've gone into a bit more detail. Here we go. So yeah, so we've actually gone through this pretty well now. So low insulin response carbs we spoke about, increasing fats and proteins will help with that blood sugar management and controlling insulin. Monitoring meal frequency, so not going too long without a meal. Fasting's a little bit different, as I mentioned before. Now, lemon, lime, and cinnamon, they're really good to add to your water. What they do is they help with the absorption of carbohydrates. So in other words, they reduce the amount of insulin your body has to make to break down the glucose. So adding lemon, lime, and cinnamon are just a really great way to reduce your overall insulin response to foods and help with your blood sugar management. So, and it tastes better. So water, you probably end up drinking more water. So it'll help with cortisol and staying hydrated. Again, I've spoke about the high volume, 20 to 45 minutes. Split up body parts. So you might start on a full body routine initially if you're quite new to resistance training, but then start to split them up. And then you'll find that training for that 20, 30, 45-minute period will be quite effective, because when you're just training legs or just training back and shoulders, for example, your muscles burn out pretty quickly. And so you'll find that after that 30, 45-minute mark, you'll be ready to finish for the day. And then compound exercises predominantly. So if you are time poor, a compound exercise would be, say, a lat pull down as opposed to a bicep curl. So lat pull down, you use a lot more muscles than what you would in a bicep curl. So sleep is king, 7 to 8 hours. Some people say when they get older, they might only need 6 hours sleep. Most studies would say 7 to 8. Just go to bed at the same time. If you're a shift worker, sleep in a dark room if you're sleeping during the day, because shift work, as we know, it really does screw up the hormones, really increases cortisol if we don't get that good quality sleep in. Sleep actually blunts cortisol. So as soon as you go into that deep sleep, it blunts cortisol, and that's why when we wake up feeling refreshed, we know we've had good quality sleep. If you wake up a little bit tired, it might mean there's a bit of adrenal fatigue going on there. So you might need to revisit cortisol control and really try and think of ways to control cortisol production better. But if you're waking up refreshed, if you're sleeping in a dark room, if you're getting that regular 7 to 8 hours, going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time, then you're doing the right thing there. Penciling downtime, I just went through this with accountability. Just planning your day so that you actually know, okay, this is my day. When am I going to fit in time for myself? Is it a gratitude diary or journal at night? Even, a good television show just winds you down, doesn't stress you out. Things like that. I mean, it doesn't have to be overcomplicated. Just make sure that you take that time out for yourself. Monitor screen time. I usually say 8 o'clock, doesn't always happen, but that's really good for cortisol control. Your body produces a hormone called dopamine when you're looking at screens. So if you're producing too much dopamine at night, you'll actually start to release cortisol at the same time. So dopamine's great in the morning. Cortisol is actually great in the morning, and cortisol should be the highest in the morning and the lowest at night. So if you're having adrenal issues and you want to do a cortisol test, You can ask your GP. I'm pretty sure they'll refer you to get a saliva test. And then what that will show, you'll have to do it throughout different sections of the day, but it will show your overall cortisol throughout the day. So it should be high, and then it should wind down. If it's not doing that, there could be possible adrenal fatigue issues going on there. Supplementation, I've gone over a good quality multi if you're not sure where to start. Methylated B vitamins and magnesium I've talked about to assist lowering cortisol. The HCI will help with digestion and lowering cortisol. And then, you know, cortisol and insulin control, it's almost impossible where vitamin and mineral deficiency are present. So you always want to make sure that you've got enough minerals and vitamins in your body. If your eating's a little bit off, you're not getting enough veggies and things in, then you might consider a good quality multi there. And then I've already talked about the amino acid. The glycine is another amino acid that I promote, and that really helps reduce blood glucose. So again, helping insulin. But it also helps with stress management. So it's fantastic for sleep. So if you're having, or if you're perimenopause or postmenopause, you're still getting that heat at night, it helps reduce your core temperature. So that's why it's so good for sleep. So that's a good one as well. These are the three I sell. If you are interested, I can send you the quotes for them. Orders are at my email address there. They're fantastic products. They do a lot, Poliquin, but these are the three that I tend to feel like are the most relevant for belly fat and in particular insulin cortisol control. So, and also the BCAA is fantastic for training. So that's that one. So if you need help with nutrition, exercise programming, and you just need a bit of accountability, I've got my Muscle Mama programs. A lot of you guys are already doing them, but you actually get all the tools. So you get all the nutrition guidelines, the training, the lifestyle and supplement guidelines as well. With the 28-day program, it comes with weekly coaching calls. So you'll get to speak to me on a call, usually about half an hour. Some of my guys goes longer because we love a chat. But generally we go for about half an hour. And it just basically is a check-in to make sure you're on track and workshop any issues that are coming up. So it's a lot of information you've learnt today. Hopefully you've processed most of it, but I'll have the replay if you do want to come back. So I've got 3 phases available. Phase 1 is for beginners. Phase 2 is for wanting to step up their current training routine. And phase 3 is for the advanced trainer. I've actually planned up to phase 10, which I'm working on at the moment. So if you're over phase 3, you can contact me and I can give you another high volume training program. The weekly coaching calls, it's just making it a bit more individualized. I feel like it's workshopping things that come up that are a little bit of a stumbling block. So now you've got the information, say, about belly fat. You know that you need to control cortisol. You know you need to control insulin, but you just need that little bit of assistance in keeping you accountable, but also having a bit of support. There might be things that you specifically want to work on. So you might want to really work on your sleep management, and you just need, again, that support to get you through it. So that's what the coaching calls are, is just a weekly check-in. These are the results. It definitely works. Accountability works. The hormone principles works. As I always say, it's one thing to know the knowledge, but it's putting the knowledge into practice. So I guess that's where the coaching comes in and having someone to support you along the way. But the proof's in the pudding, right? And all these lovely ladies, I think over 40. I think maybe Lisa might be under 40, but you know, it's never too late, as I always say, to get your body in the shape that you want, and also to be feeling great hormonally. I think aesthetics are a great goal, but I think it's more as you get older about the quality of life. Well, I know for me, it's really has been quality of life. Having the energy to play with the kids, not having the excess flab around the midsection, all those things become quite important. So it's usually $89.95. If you use the SAL 2020 code, you can get 15% off any of my my programs. So that's tonight for the webinar, and we can kickstart your coaching calls this week if you're really motivated to get started. I'd love to help you out. Once you sign up and I see your order come through, I'll contact you immediately, either email or Facebook. I usually work through Facebook Messenger, and then we'll get your coaching call underway so we can start to implement some of the things you learnt tonight.